Two thumbs up if we sound good, pretty good back there, yeah? Awesome. We'll be underway in just a moment here, folks. And we'll head on out and explore Africa. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Who's joining us for the first time here today? Show of hands, here for the first time? Everyone's been here before? Yeah, awesome. Okay, oh, there's a couple of hands. All right. Well, welcome, everyone. We'll be heading out here. Just wait for a couple of last friends to climb aboard. We'll head on out and explore Africa. So hi there, everyone, and welcome to the African Tram Safari here at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. My name is Heather, and I'm going to be your driver and guide here for the next 25 to 30 minutes. But before we get to all that fun stuff, gotta go over that board safety talk. If you all can give your doors a wiggle, please let me know out on your roads. Make sure they're fully closed. They are latched, not locked. So do not lean on them. I don't want to leave anyone along the way. And as we are in motion, remain seated at all times. If I do come up with a quick stop, feel free to stand up and get a better look. And next, if you happen to experience a medical emergency while you're out on the road today, go ahead and look on the ceiling above you. There are some yellow strips that you can press, and they will get my attention up here. If you are in the car just behind me there are no yellow strips, but no worries, guys. Just give me a little wave or a tap on the window, and I can see it just fine. And lastly, if you happen to drop any items along the way, I can ask stop for that dropped item, and just let me know at the end of the tour what it was. And I can have someone go get that for you later. So hang on tight to those cell phones and have some today. I definitely just ran over a cell phone on my left train path, so hang on tight to them. I don't want to take out anyone else's phones today. And with that being said, let's get to it, guys. So as we head throughout our journey today, we're going to be exploring the savanna habitats out here and looking at all the awesome wildlife, looking at their adaptations and seeing how those adaptations not only help them to survive, but thrive within their environments. A lot of these guys are coming from some pretty hot, harsh climates out in Africa. But East Africa on the left-hand side there, we'll be getting a better look at that on the way back in. So don't you worry. But first things first, let's check out the flamboyance of greater flamingos on the right-hand side there. Now you got your greater flamingos and your lesser flamingos. It doesn't mean they're any better than the lesser, just mostly up to their size though. Well, actually, they may be a bit better appearance, that is. Sometimes what they'll do is cut the lesser flamingo chicks out here for the graders to raise, but what I want you to take note of is their coloration. They may be a bit lighter in color than you're used to seeing most flamingos being, and that is due to their environment in which they originally come from in Africa. They're living on the hot salt flats, so that lighter color is going to do a couple of things for them. One, it's going to act as some camouflage to help blend them in, but two, it's going to reflect the sunlight to keep them a little bit cooler. And it would be similar as if you were wearing a light-colored shirt on a hot day to keep you cool as well, because light colors are always going to reflect that heat. Wildlife Alliance here at the Safari Park. We are one of the few front doors to the organization, and of course that other one is the San Diego Zoo downtown at Balboa Park. And we opened our doors in 1972 to the public, and we originally started as a breeding facility for the San Diego Zoo. We are situated on 1,800 acres out here in the beautiful San Pasqual Valley here in San Diego County. About half of those acres, 900 or so, are in park around us right now, what you're seeing, and the other half are just outside of the park surrounding us, dedicated to protecting the native habitat of the coastal sage-grouse for crested creatures like the California mule deer or the burrowing owl. And still looking off to the right-hand side here, it looks like, oh, we've got the African rock habitat, or sometimes we like to more formally call it the Nikita Khan Rhino Rescue Center. It doesn't look like any rhino friends have joined us out front currently right now. Perhaps they're having a nice little Thanksgiving feast in back. But I always like to chat about it real quick because they're doing some really awesome work here. So they're studying the reproductive sciences of the southern white rhino, because if everyone could quickly flash me a little peace sign. Peace, guys, what's up? How's it going? Now that's not only the amount of horns that they have, which is 2 of course, it's the amount of their close cousin, the northern white rhino that are left in the entire world. That is right. That peace sign represents the amount of northern white rhinos left, which is 2. They are a mother and daughter, both female, that are too old to reproduce now. So what that means is that species has become functionally extinct. But don't worry, there is still hope. By studying the southern white rhino here, they'd like to one day hopefully be able to create a northern white rhino embryo from genetic material stored in the frozen zoo here. Got a little mule deer friend on the left there. So if you see those guys wandering around, don't worry. They are just break-ins, not the species. But by studying the southern white rhino here, one day hopefully be able to create a northern white rhino embryo from genetic material stored in the frozen zoo here. I know it sounds a little bit like Jurassic Park, it kind of is, but then to have that southern white act as a surrogate for their northern white cousin to help bring that species back. Some pretty cool stuff, if I do say so myself, and I can chat about rhinos all day. I'm a bit of a fan, and I've definitely gotten in trouble for doing so. But I can't forget about our bird friends off to the left, some pretty bird enthusiasts that may be on board, as long as a few more of those here. But there are 2 species of pelican out here in the South Pond. It's the Dalmatian pelican, who are a bit grayish in coloration, compared to their friends, the great white pelican, who are a bit brighter white. But like the flamingos, the light color of that pelican, of course, will reflect the sunlight to keep them cool, but also keep them hidden from predators down below. So if you're a shark or a crocodile looking up towards the surface of the water against the sky, the light color of that pelican is going to blend you in really nicely, keeping you a tad more hidden from perhaps being into their next little birdie snack. Because if you are not hiding from predators, you're not surviving, and you're definitely not thriving. And here at the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance, the organization strives to create a world where all life can thrive. And they do this by focusing conservation efforts in on 8 different hubs around the world. We will be visiting 2 of those hubs today, which one is represented to the left there in South Africa, being that Savannah hub. But we've also got to be mindful about our own backyard surrounding us on the hills, that Southwest hub, and that coastal sage scrub. And there's thought to be only about 15% remaining of coastal sage scrub from what was originally here that still remains undeveloped, which is not nearly enough. One of my favorite dudes is out to say hello in the bird marsh. We look at the waterfall just to the right of that, kind of lurking in the background there is a lappet-faced vulture. Now, vultures tend to get a bit of a bad rap sometimes. You know, they seem to be a little creepy or gross, always eating all those dead things all the time. But what they're doing is just what we like them to do, which is they're being nature's cleanup crew out there. So they're clearing out those dead and rotting carcasses. They're like the sanitation workers, if you will. And by clearing out all that yucky stuff, they're helping keep other wildlife safe. So maybe if, you don't care about vultures too much, they're kind of creepy looking. That's all right. They're bald and stuff. But we got to care about vultures because they're helping, maybe your favorite animal is a giraffe. And they're helping out keep the giraffes nice and safe. So these guys play a really vital role in keeping a, healthy, balanced ecosystem. So they play a really vital role in that. They've got extremely acidic stomachs and can even digest things such as anthrax. So thank you, vultures. We appreciate you guys. Keep up the good work. That's also, of course, why they've got that balder head and necks there. To keep all that yucky stuff off of them so they can do their oh so important jobs while staying nice and safe. We're also still looking off to the right-hand side here, folks. It's going to be some sommering gazelles. They've got those cute little white underbellies. So kind of a common theme we'll see here. That light color is always going to reflect the heat, keep them cool like on the pelicans and flamingos. And that tan color is going to blend them in nicely to their environment. These guys are coming from a lot more of a hot, arid environment where resources are more scarce. So certain adaptations you'll see on some species of antelope or gazelle are either the presence of horns in the females or not. So these guys, hot, arid environment, resources are more scarce. They all have horns because they need to compete for those resources. And having those horns helps them out with that. So these guys will kind of either just graze on the grasses below or the branches the leaves from above, depending on what they can find available to them. As you can see, the wildlife care specialists have hung up some branches on those ropes there. It looks like they have already stripped them clean though. And very similar in coloration to the sommering gazelle are the springboks, about halfway up the hillside here on the left-hand side there. Little tiny dudes. They still got those white underbellies and tan on the top. These guys have an extra little feature on them. You got black stripes running down the side of them. that is to try to give them a bit bulkier in appearance, because if you can't always be hiding from predators with camouflage, hopefully you can try to intimidate them with your size. Even though these guys, we don't have too much size on their side, they're trying. Or you can try to outmaneuver those predators. So cheetahs oftentimes go after these guys because cheetahs will not be going after prey that is any larger than them. They are a pretty small cat, very lightweight. So they go for more of the Thompson's gazelles or the springboks. But so all these guys may be a bit slower than a cheetah at about 40 to 50 miles per hour. So a cheetah's reaching 70 miles per hour, but they're only maintaining that for about 30 seconds or so. So if these guys get enough of a head start, they're doing all right. Or they'll try to outmaneuver them with a behavior that's called pronking. And what pronking means is they're kind of jumping off all 4 feet at once, straight up into the air, almost like a pogo stick. So hopefully you can get enough of a head start or outmaneuver that cheetah with some pronking. See another day, and not perhaps be their next little popcorn chicken. As we go along here, we've got another species of antelope in the shade of that tree there. Those are Patterson's eland, or sometimes called the common eland. It's going to be the largest species of antelope, that beautiful khaki-colored coat. And the one that's laying down there, you can kind of see really nicely under her neck there. There's a little flap of skin hanging down there. Now that's not a frog in her throat, but it's actually just an adaptation called a dewlap. So what that dewlap does is there are some blood vessels bundled up in the dewlap there. What will happen is the blood circulates into the dewlap, it cools off because it is away from the rest of their body. Then that cooled up blood goes back into them, cooling them off further, almost kind of like their own little personal AC, especially being in that hot savanna sun. It's a little bit harder to cool yourself off, especially being that larger animal. And about 1 o'clock from those Patterson's eland, about halfway up the hill, they're chocolatey brown antelope laying there. You might see those little white rings around their tushies there. That's how they get their name from that little ellipse shape. Those are called ellipsid waterbuck. And to contrast, like the summer gazelle or those Patterson's eland ladies that have horns, these girls do not. So that is telling us just the opposite. They're coming from areas where resources are a little bit more plentiful, so they don't need to compete for them quite as much. And like their name suggests, the waterbuck, that's where you will find them, often hanging in and around the water. So sometimes they'll even jump into it to get away from a predator, and they've got an adaptation that helps them out with that. Their coats are a lot more shaggy and oily. It's going to help repel the water and keep them a little bit drier. And while some either need those horns to compete for resources or not, there are some out here who don't need to compete much at all, well, at least for height that is, as you can't miss them. Standing 16 to 18 feet tall, those Maasai giraffes. And for about every foot of height that they've got, there is an inch of that tongue, meaning that tongue is 16 to 18 inches long, and it would be about the length if you were looking at your arm from about your elbow to the tip of your middle finger or so. And that tongue is prehensile, and what that means, it will just wrap around and grasp onto things, a lot like our hands can. And if you've ever seen a giraffe tongue up close in person or even just in a photo, those tongues are very darkly pigmented, a dark gray, almost black, and that's thought to act as a natural sun protectant because those tongues are exposed for quite a bit of the day while they're eating all those tasty leaves, and wouldn't be too fun to be eating all those tasty leaves with a sunburned tongue now, would it? And giraffes are definitely known for their really unique patterning. It is very striking and different compared to a lot of other species you see around here. But it's not there just to look cool, it's actually serving a purpose as blending them into their environment, believe it or not. So as the giraffes are walking around the trees and the branches, and there's a little bit of light streaming in, it almost looks like shadows on them. And brown is actually going to blend in really nicely to green branches and leaves behind you because predators are seeing at a great scale. So if you're to take a picture of the giraffe against a bunch of trees and some branches, or even someone that's, let's say, bright orange in coloration, and put a black and white filter on it, they're going to blend in really nicely. So sometimes what may look really obvious to us with our color vision, to a predator, they're hiding quite nicely. It looks like we've got a couple more species of antelope down on the side here. I want to point these guys out. We've got a bit of an antelope party going on. Just next to the giraffe, there are the gemsbots, and the sable antelope against the grassy hill back there. And both of these species are actually doing a nice job at displaying a certain type of behavior that is called an alert circle. And what that alert circle is doing is everyone in the group is kind of facing a different direction, which, maybe it looks like they had a bit of a fight, or like someone said something, but they're literally just kind of having each other's back. So everyone in the group is kind of facing a different direction. That way, with the predator starts approaching, hopefully at least one individual in the group will see that predator and let the rest of their buddies know and alert them that, hey, danger is nearby, we should get on out of there. Thus the name, the alert circle. And those pink buffalo are actually demonstrating that a little bit too as well. That's that chocolatey brown color, or colored cattle, further up the path here. Lead down with the short, curved, upright fork. And you may be saying, these guys are really standing out with that dark coloration. How are they hiding from predators? Well, actually, they are doing just what they'd like us to be saying. Is by standing out with that dark coloration, they want to stand out and be seen and noticed because they do have some size on their side. So if you can't blend in from predators with camouflage, hopefully at least you can scare them away with your also largeness. And these guys will do behavior that is called mobbing. If a predator does start to approach them or they feel a little bit threatened, they'll kind of stamp their feet and run at that predator and say, hey, watch out, I'm bigger than you, I'm probably going to win. And to not forget our friend on the right-hand side here, before we head up the hill, these guys are possibly going to be some endangered species that we see out here in the courthouse today. There's supposed to be only about 200 or so of them left in the wild, and they face threats such as droughts and famine, civil unrest, and unfortunately some poaching that has dwindled numbers so much in the wild. And but there is a breeding program here at the park to help these guys out, and there's been actually 40 of them born over the years here. We are only one of 5 zoos in the United States to have them, so it is pretty special that they are here. And for the time to begin, we're going to be heading up the hill here, heading out of savannas of South Africa to a more forested area in Central Africa. I am unable to stop on the hill here, so just have your eyeballs peeled and cameras at the ready for anything you may see along the way. We pull past these trees on the left here. I want you to look across the hillside. You may see some orange dots over there. Those are Ugandan frogs. Another good example of what may look really obvious to us with color vision, they're actually just hiding in plain sight to a predator. Because orange will blend in almost perfectly with the green grass in that grayscale. Especially if they are laying nice and still there. But as we approach the end of the hill up here, there is an eastern black rhino that I spy. If you look at those rocks, there's one actually laying next to the rocks. I almost missed him. That is Kenny laying next to the rocks. They're doing his best rock impression. You could say that's perhaps one of my boulder jokes. That is Miss Aria, closest to the wall there. If you break the name rhinoceros down into the Greek meaning, rhino meaning nose, plural meaning horns, these guys are literally called nose horns. Pull past these beautiful rhinos, I want you to feel your fingernails or your hair. It's going to be made out of a protein called keratin, which is the same material that their horns are made out of. And it's thought based on that rhino horns have medicinal properties that can cure things like cancer. Now, unless our fingernails can also cure cancer, rhino horns are doing more or less the same, and unfortunately they are being poached at an alarming rate for those horns at about 3 per day, or roughly 1 every 8 hours. But back in 2018, the park was able to send an eastern black rhino that was born here into a protected reserve in Tanzania out in Africa. His name was Eric. He helped with rhino numbers out there. So of course the park is always working really hard here to help these guys out, as well as always working with other organizations around the world to do so, because they do need our help. They cannot do it alone. And just what you'll be hearing us today is doing it just that, because we are a nonprofit organization. And on that note, check out that pelicans, which are those really gray, fluffy looking ones. Plus, we've got some native pelican friends from the local area around here, just some North American pelicans. Those are the bright white ones with the orange legs. We get quite a lot of local wildlife here, like those mule deers we saw earlier, or those pelicans. That's okay, this is their backyard as well. And on the topic of their own backyard, that southwest suburb I mentioned earlier, plenty of efforts been on around the world. And another very in conservation is that of the California Condor Project. So condors are a vulture, and underwater vultures are that cleanup crew out there. They play a really vital role in creating a healthy ecosystem. San Diego County is actually the most biodiverse county in the country. It's a biodiversity hotspot, and biodiversity offers ecosystem services such as things like so it's really important that we get these to protect these hotspots. For the animals to lay around and munch on. As I mentioned earlier, the park is a large facility at about 900 or so acres in and around here. We have to be mindful of resources used. The park is run on almost entirely recycled and reclaimed water. Reclaimed like you saw down there in the south pond where those pelicans were at the beginning of the tour. You too can help out at home a little bit if you're living in and around this area by planting native plants or drought-resistant ones in your yard. It's going to be helping out on your water bill, and you're also helping to create places where native animals can come. So if you're planting things like milkweed, which could be a home and food source for friends and creatures like monarch butterflies, whose populations have declined about 99% in recent years. And unfortunately, mostly due to habitat loss. It's kind of a story for a lot of these guys. But oh my Lanta, look at those forms on the right-hand side there. I mean, holy cow, oh my goodness. Most of those forms up there reaching up to 6 feet wide, tip to tip. So for reference again, those 4 seats put together that you're sitting on about 6 foot wide. So these guys would just barely fit on our trams here. But I have a feeling they probably wouldn't be the best passengers. And those horns aren't due to any sort of adaptation that's going to help them out in their environment to survive or thrive. It's just been due to selective human breeding, as they are a domestic cattle. And that's also why you see that variation in coloration there. Some are solid and some are spotted. And these guys are actually seen as a sign of status and wealth in a Coley society. So sometimes you'll see them walking their cattle around town, showing them off, saying, hey, look at my giant cows with their massive horns. I have so much status and wealth. Check me out. And it would be similar as if you were zipping around town in a little sports car to show off your wealth society as well. We've got a little friend lurking along the fence there. Some of you saw him. That is a male ellipsan waterbuck. So we saw those females earlier, those chocolatey brown ones with no horns, little ellipse shape around their hind end there. To contrast that, the male does have horns. As you can see him still lurking around in the ravine against the fence there. And Males are always going to need horns because they always have to compete for mates. For the San Diego Zoo. And he had this idea that if perhaps he could create a place where the environment was as natural as possible to the native habitats where these guys originally come from, that perhaps there would be a lot of success with breeding and reproduction for conservation. And he was right in a lot of respects. For example, the safari park has been the most successful in southern white rhino births out of anywhere in the world, with over 100 born here. And that is due to the setup here, because southern white rhino females need to live in a large social group so they can feel nice and safe. And these big savanna habitats allow for these large groups. And if they're feeling nice and safe, that means they will then go into estrus, which then means, of course, they are able to reproduce then. And 2 of those 104 were actually born from artificial insemination, or AI. The only 2 in North America to be born from AI for rhinos, which is not only extremely exciting, but it's just another step along the way to one day hopefully being able to have that northern white rhino embryo like I was mentioning earlier, and having this it's not a very straightforward process. So it's pretty complicated and it's fairly new science. So one of these days we're still quite a few years off, but every day we're getting closer and closer to that help us save that northern white rhino. Back, but hey, in fact, we are in East Africa as promised. Got some giraffes about halfway up the hill there, hanging out, towering above the rest, of course. And a group of giraffes is actually called a tower, and that's because sometimes they're referred to as the watchtowers of the savannah. They have extremely good eyesight because they can see up to almost a mile away. So oftentimes you'll see smaller animals out of the savannah looking at the giraffes for cues. So, find a giraffe homie and buddy up, because if giraffe friend starts running, they've probably been able to see danger long before you could, so you should get on out of there as well. Because when you are a prey animal out on the savannah, you don't want to be questioning too much. Rule is, giraffes run, you run, ask questions later. The Tram safari here is coming to a close. We're heading back into the station. Outlets to keep them cool. Or the shadier coat to the ellipse and water bucket to help fast water and keep them a little bit drier. And on behalf of myself and the organization, the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Alliance and the Safari Park, I'd like to thank you all for visiting here with us today through one of the 2 front doors. We are a non-profit organization, so that means everything from here, admission tickets, anything purchased within the park, is all going back into not only caring for the wildlife here, but wildlife and conservation projects all around the world to help create that world where all life can thrive. Again, my name is Heather. If anyone has any questions, please be up at the front of the tram. Feel free to say hello. And remain fully seated until we get to a complete stop here at the station. Only exit to the right of the vehicle, so that's the side towards all those humans. Thank you for spending your Thanksgiving here with us at the Safari Park today, and you all have a wonderful rest of your day and holiday, everyone. Bye, everyone. Thank you.